Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
I have a lot of news to spit out here.
News.
So I'm just gonna news. I'm just gonna hit it straight. You know, I mentioned NRM a week or two ago, and a video kicking off, and that working nicely. He's about to hit 2,500 subs from having like 200 a month ago.
Wow.
He's got a video that's at about 50,000 views. Nearing 100,000 for the channel. Like it's kicking off. It's happening, which is incredible to see because when one video does well, like you don't quite know what the next one's going to be like, how it's going to work. So to see that grind continue to go and go and go, it's happening. That's one thing. Another one is Base Weight, who got a significant promotion. Base Weight, for the veterans of the podcast and the Discord, Base Weight's been around forever, so you know him. That's one of those cases where it's good to see somebody do something for a couple of years and then there it goes. It happens there. We had another one in the Baby Gang. Colton was I love this story because it's exactly what we have talked about with silent grinding. I think that was the phrase you used a long time ago. And I'm going to read this one verbatim. I've been grinding for around 5 years pro bono doing camera work. Previous director quit and doing his position without a paycheck for the last few months. Now being onboarded as a staff member and making twice as much as his current job. And it's also, that directing gig too it was really the aim. That was it. And it ends with, I quit my old job today, and that we were right. Silent grinding pays off. Mm-hmm. So we're actually getting to see, it happen for a lot of people we've known for a while. And it's tremendous validation for so many of the things that we've talked about.
Well, and it's also validation in that it takes time because, like you said, it's been a while. These people have been a part of our community and have been part of listening to the podcast and supporting the community for such a long time. And it's happening, after years, that is how it goes. So that is part of the silent grinding message too, that this is not like an overnight success sort of thing, but the success does come alongside the silent grinding. Now, speaking of success, we have seen in recent months highly, highly successful YouTubers take two different paths once they decide sort of how they're going to basically live the next 5 years or so of their lives. Now, we already talked about, YouTubers quote unquote quitting. That's a little bit of a clickbait word to use when you're talking about someone like Tom Scott, who obviously is not really quitting overall, just really pivoting. Or even someone like Meat Canyon, who we've had on the podcast, who is ramping down doing the animations, but I mean, in a lot of ways is making more content than ever, with the Papa Meat channel. So there's also MatPat, who we mentioned, who really is moving on from the YouTube thing, but most certainly going to be, having his hands in new creative projects. I'm pretty sure he's working on a play. Or he already has a play. I don't know. I'm a little outside of the loop on exactly what the details of MatPat's next move are, but he's making moves that are really outside of YouTube. So all of those I would consider one path. Okay. That's like left path, which is really not doing like the super hard YouTube grind anymore and finding other projects, whether it's working on a play or working on a podcast, whatever it is. Just recently, I think it was about a week and a half ago or so, Rhett and Link took a new path that I found really fascinating and is why I wanted to bring it up on the podcast and talk to you about.
It's such a new, different path that it warrants this is the fork in the road, that you take the left path, which you just described, or you do this Rhett and Link new path.
Well, I think so. And I'm sure, maybe somebody in the chat or some of our listeners will say, well, so-and-so did this already, but I can't think of who that so-and-so is. When I saw Rhett and Link's video, which they, of course, cheekily titled something like "We're done," and then explained,
I saw the tweet. Yeah.
Explain what "we're done" means. I found their story really compelling and interesting and unique. So for those, well, they really explained it in the video. I know, but that not everyone listening watched the video, so I'll do my best to kind of recap what it was about. And I think it also speaks to sort of like a larger discussion that I think that we can have about the differences between YouTube today and traditional media. The crux of their announcement was that they are doubling, tripling, quadrupling down hard on YouTube. They are investing a whole bunch of money and resources, and they even admitted in the video that they very well may lose a lot of money on doing this, but they're doing it. They are going to basically dump a whole bunch of the money that they've made on YouTube into YouTube and making like a gigantic, splashy passion project that will be available on YouTube. That was what their announcement was. So rather than taking the left path, which is let me explore, non-YouTube things or a different, smaller YouTube thing, they're taking, in my opinion, this right path, which is like, let's just put all of our chips, push them to the middle of the YouTube table and see what happens.
I think that's a fair breakdown because what you described is, it seems like there's people who are doing some kind of pivot, which is normal. It's natural for a lot of reasons. I mean, I don't think that a lot of people understand fully how draining it is to be an on-camera talent, especially if you've spent a lot of years getting to the point where you're just doing that for the most part, because we know everybody's doing everything to get to that point. Most people are doing their writing and editing and everything. So then by the time you get there, you've been doing it a million years, and it's hard. It's really hard. There are a lot of restrictions that come with that. And I'm not trying to make it seem like being on-camera YouTube talent is the hardest job in the world. I'm sorry, Kevin, but it's not.
Oh, it isn't?
No. But still, there's a point at which, he'd rather do something else. So you pivot to that thing. That's fine. And we've talked about other people doing that too. Like, hey, there's a point at which your sports career is done. So maybe you want to go into coaching. Maybe you want to become a commentator, whatever. It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, then you get these people who are like, yeah, this thing has run its course, and I'm just going to do this giant leap. Like they got so far in terms of success and fulfillment where they can do something kind of crazy that is potentially doubly fulfilling. I like that. I think it's awesome that they're not pivoting. They're using everything as a giant launch point to do something even bigger and even better. You do have to want to put that commitment in, though. That's its own crazy, awful, debilitating grind. And they're up for it. So I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, I was really excited about it as well, because I felt the same way. I was like, oh, this is fascinating to me that Rhett and Link have been around YouTube and doing it at an extremely high level and pumping out a ridiculous and absolutely preposterous amount of content for a very long time. So to see those two guys be like, well, time to do way more. It's like, that is really actually very inspiring, in a different way than I was happy, for instance, I was happy for someone like Tom Scott, really happy for him to see him be like, you know what? I did it. I had a goal in mind and I nailed it. And I'm really proud of the work that I did, over the course of these 10 years. And now it's time to do something else. Like, that is its own very, very cool and admirable thing to see someone who really kind of fulfilled their dreams and now they're on to the next thing. Like, that is amazing. In a different way, I think it's amazing to see what Rhett and Link are doing, to say, yeah, we have spent, 10 plus years and a billion hours on this thing. Let's do more. Let's do more of this. And you can't do that, as an athlete, for example, to go back to your earlier example. It's not like, Michael Jordan at age 45. It's like, well, maybe I'll play baseball and basketball full time now, like he tried to do miserably in the early 90s. But, you cannot do that in a lot of other industries. But the fact that you can on YouTube, I think, is really strange and cool.
I think so too. And as you're describing this, I think that you and I have a very strong bias here in favor of the Rhetts and Links of the world.
Why?
Because what you described is what both of us have been doing for 5 years. So consider this. You did this insane grind, which we've talked about many times. You and the chicken wing days going home and then grinding out comedy. And eventually that turned into a job that would be Vsauce. And then it turned into Vsauce 2, which was when that split off and became your own full responsibility there. And then that grew and built to an exceptionally large thing. That was a long, long time ago. And then in 2016, 2017, we started talking, like, let's tack a podcast onto this. And now we're 214 something episodes later, which we didn't even acknowledge this at any point. We're in season 10, by the way.
Did we acknowledge the 200th episode? I don't even remember
we
doing
did
that.
At the time.
Okay.
No, we did that. It was, a bit of an afterthought mention. But that's crazy, right? But that was 6-7 years ago, 5, 6, 7, whatever. Then you tack the curiosity box on, and that built in to a big thing, a full-time job on its own. I tacked on my own projects. We have been tacking on, is my point. And in coming weeks, we'll go into further detail about even more tacking on.
Yeah.
But neither one of us has replaced a thing in like 10 years. We have continually added and added and added. And I cannot recall a significant thing that either of us stopped doing.
Well, I would like to do more too. I mean, there's so
that's how I feel.
Projects I would like to do that I don't have the time and energy for. But yeah, so maybe there is a big bias and a little bit of relatability between what our interests are and how they align with what Rhett and Link are doing. They are one of the reasons they're doing what they're doing is its own kind of interesting, I think, glimpse into the state of sort of YouTube media, YouTubers, and then traditional media, television and film, that industry or those industries. Because really, the impetus for them to make this show on their own, to invest their own money in doing this big new project, is they were really freaking tired of doing TV pitches that went nowhere. That was part of their rationale, is that they have spent a lot of years doing development for TV shows and series that go nowhere. And it is just a total time suck to do all that. I mean, we did a little tiny dip in the toe of that. Can you imagine doing that at a much higher level, at a much larger scale for 8 years?
No, I mean, we had outside the show stuff, there were a bunch of projects that we came up with in the earlier days where they went nowhere. And it was incredibly discouraging. It was so not just the time suck. I mean, there's always going to be more time, right? I mean, there is and there isn't. Like, yes, it's the most finite thing, whatever. But look, there's always time to do stuff. But man, when you put time into it and then it completely disappears in terms of value, there is nothing at all to show for it. It is maddening. it's really frustrating. I understand their feeling here. So like Kevin, before you got on, you're doing stuff with your microphone. And I was talking with Ducky and Monahan and Bad Spoon. That I'm planning this future project. And at this point in my life, I understand that the only way to do that quickly and efficiently is to just take the money and do it. You don't, if it's like, please approve this budget, whatever, it either won't ever happen or it's going to destroy me before it even begins. And so if there's a question of, well, you need this much money to do it, I would just say, make that money, put it, like, let's say it takes you 6 months to save that money or a year. Do that and then just do the thing, because it will take you 3 years or 5 years to try to find the money, and it will be frustrating and awful, and you will hate your life through the whole process and probably end up without it at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost assuredly.
Anyway,
yeah. Because what people, who haven't been sort of part of those meetings and don't really know what it's like to even try to be in that industry. The fact is that, are you familiar with the term/turd glad hand? Because there's a whole lot of glad handing. That is the entire media industry is like glad hand after glad hand after glad hand, who will smile and shake your hand gladly, even if they have absolutely no intention of ever really even speaking to you again, let alone working with you. That's just how that industry is, especially because something could happen and, 6 years from now, you need them. So there is this like incestual relationship, in Hollywood, in traditional media in general. I'm sure it's the same in so many of the different, whether news industry, whatever. I'm sure it's all the same, where you just really, you can't burn bridges like you could if you, I don't know, we're like a mechanic or something and you owned an audio body shop and you like hate some guy who's a jerk and you say, get out of here and never come back. And your business does not suffer for that because, the next person will come in to get their car fixed and life goes on. It doesn't work that way in media. Everybody needs each other always.
They do. And you never know when you're going to run into somebody. And it's even like that for us. I don't know if you remember this, but years ago, you and I had a meeting with somebody in person, and it just was disastrous. I wanted to rip that person from every direction. It was like, it was a time waste. It was bad advice. It was just, oh my God. Well, but no, it's like, no, you shouldn't do that, whatever. And then
it was embarrassing to be around. The whole thing was terrible. Yeah.
I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
The funny thing here is that we're thinking about two different meetings.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah. So this tells you how often this happens. but on this one, I can't even remember the circumstances, but we started dealing with some other company like 2 years later. And all of a sudden we run into that same person where they had moved from, one company to the next. And it's, you do encounter the same people. And so you can't, even if they totally deserve a cussing out to the max, you just can't do this because there's a really good chance you're going to run into them somewhere later. And that's even us, when it's that truly incestuous weirdness that Kevin just detailed in the more traditional sectors. It's even worse. And that glad handing thing, if anybody has listened to the Pink Floyd song, Have a Cigar, it's that, okay? It's that somebody filling you full of bullshit and stroking your ego to what end? And when you're us, when you're not the person whose job it is, you're thinking this is really hopeful and positive, and this is the break that I need, and all of that. And then you find out that those people generally do not care. They do this all day long. They do it forever. They don't know anything about you or what you do. And that's the best part of Have a Cigar, by the way. One of the lines is, I know it'll be fantastic. That's really what I think. Oh, by the way, which one's pink? So the record executive doesn't realize that Pink Floyd is not like the singer of the band. And it's just the perfect encapsulation of this. So anyway, that's what you're dealing with. That's what you're dealing with when you go through this system, and it almost never works out. And we've said forever, no matter what you want to do, unless it's like Michael Bay level big budget is your only passion in the world, you just need to do the thing and figure out how to do it on no money.
Yeah,
that's right. Buy, some stuff that'll burn at a hardware store and film it on your iPhone and pretend it's Michael Bay level and put it on YouTube. And then just move on to the next project. But yeah, the moment you enter into this territory, you get that Rhett and Link story that's like, yeah, we've been in development hell with nothing to show for it for 5 years. And now it's time to just do it, get it done.
Do it ourselves, which is what we're saying. And that's what they announced. They just said, we're just going to do this ourselves. And, believe me when I say that, like, Rhett and Link, they are the creme de la creme when it comes to, YouTubers walking into those meetings. So that just goes to show you that no one's funding this stuff. Like, it is so impossible to get these shows made that even if you're a Rhett and Link who have been on the Tonight Show, they have a presence in traditional media. They weren't able to push the thing through. And the thing is like, even if you do get this green light, even if you do make it to pilot or whatever it is, you get the thing pushed through. There are so many cooks in that kitchen, so many hands in your pie, that your pie is no longer your pie. And for YouTubers who have spent a career making their own pies from scratch, just the way that they like them, man, that is like an impossible transition to make. So years ago, probably, I would say a decade ago, gosh, at this point, I think that there was there's going to be this sort of on-ramp going from YouTube to television. I think everyone expected that. Agents expected that. YouTubers expected that. And I do think also probably the younger, more in tune TV execs also expected that. That did not happen. I mean, the other thing that that I never realized until I got further into some of these meetings is that these TV channels have very specific programming, meaning like they're not going to just because you have a great idea for a show. So say that you want to pitch a show for the Science Channel, and it's a science-related show, okay? And it is the greatest science-related show in the world. Well, if they're like programming slate and the type of shows that they're going to be making in the next year doesn't neatly and cleanly fit alongside those other shows, it's not getting made. They're not just going to throw like random stuff together. They have like very particular kind of like nested visions for like what the channel is and for what it isn't. And like, for example, True TV, during the height of shows like Adam Ruins Everything, I think that was on True TV. This was a while now ago, so I don't remember the slate of shows that they had. But I think that
I didn't watch that one, by the way. I didn't watch Adam Ruins Everything. So I'm depending on you here. I don't have a lot to add.
Well, that's fine. I didn't watch it either, but I knew what it was. And I was part of meetings in which I was told, like, you know, this is the type of show that we see as a flagship of this channel. And I think it was True TV. So I think it was like Adam Ruins Everything. It was that, I think Impractical Jokers. And then I think there were like a couple of other ones that they had sort of hot on the heels of those shows, in which their whole like channel identifying format was strong personalities. So every single show needed to have an Adam Conover type, very strong, like almost cartoonishly strong. Like he was very much like a cartoon character. And I mean that in the same way that like Guy Fieri is a cartoon character, right? A very strong personality. That was what they were going for. So if you were to come in with this show that didn't have that, like say maybe it was mostly voiceover or something, and it was about like crazy visuals, even if everyone loved it and it was a great idea, too bad, because it doesn't fit in with our plan to be a channel of strong personalities with like wacky hosts that the audience can attach to and identify with and love and follow on social media, whatever it was. So that's another thing that I don't think, well, that I didn't realize certainly until I was part of some of those meetings in which it's like, okay, it really isn't just, hey, I have a big audience and I have a great idea for a show, and, you know, our demographics align. Why don't we make a show together? It's also, well, what show can you come up with that we can do together that fits like very specifically into this like narrow focus of what our channel is? And once you start chipping away at that, you know, you get to a point where it's like, well, I don't want to make that show. And I'm sure, you know, Rhett and Link, I'm sure they ran into that over and over and over again, or to the point where it's like, well, this is it. I guess it's the same idea, but this isn't the show. This isn't a show that I want to make, or that I would be proud of, or that I want to pour my heart and soul and talent and time into. So no.
Yeah, books operate the same way as everything that you've just described, where you can hit a spot where somebody might say, this is a pretty good book, but we are totally tapped out on, you know, something that'll appeal to 12-year-old boys. Like we've got a slate to fit that demographic. Would you like to write a book for teen girls? You know, it's like, well, that's not what I do. I probably wouldn't be able to give you something that would be the quality that you need, you know? And then you get the things where it's like, yeah, this is a good book, but especially with an agent, be like, this is a good book, but I don't really rep these books. I don't want to sell this one. They have a million things to choose from. And so they can find the books that are quality, that they think are going to do really well, that are also, you know, in their personal interest sphere, personal competence, anything like that. And it can get really granular. So you would think that a book that's written to appeal to 12-year-old boys would also appeal to 14-year-old boys. There's really not a huge difference in the grand scheme of things between 6th grade and 8th grade. It's all middle school, you know, like this is really close. You think of something like Harry Potter, It was like, okay, this is a great story. It'll appeal to everybody. But that's usually a surprise, and that's never the plan where, I wasn't there for the meetings. I don't know what the plan was with J.K. Rowling, but I'm sure there was a very tight demographic that this book was meant to be distributed to and to enjoy it. And then it exploded and everybody got surprised. That's really good. But yeah, you get this one thing that was fascinating to me that I had never considered and it makes a shocking amount of sense is that kids, I say kids meaning under 18s, so young adults all the way down, do not like reading about characters that are younger than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden I started to understand, okay, if you're going to write something if you want something written for 14-year-olds, well, you need a character that's at least 14. And if you make them 14, then you have a 16-year-old problem.
Right.
So there's the aspirational comfort where an 8th grader likes reading about a high schooler, but it takes a really unique scenario for something like, I forget if Harry Potter was 8 or 9 whenever he first gets into Hogwarts, but that's a really unique scenario where people like reading down.
It's an impossible scenario. It happened. It's happened once.
Yeah. It's a little strange to me because I read mostly young adult fiction because I am fried at the end of the night, and so I can't deal with anything heavy. It's got to be really accessible young adult writing for the most part. Mm-hmm. And I love the Warrior Cats books. Those are designed for boys and girls who are 10. They're incredible. I love them. The characters are cats, so it's not perfect, but I never, Ranger's Apprentice is another one that's very good, where it's a coming of age series. I think the kid starts out at 12, and it never occurred to me. It's why am I reading about, a dumb kid? it just didn't. But anyway, these things I went in this crazy tangent, but this is how all of these people you're meeting with are thinking about your idea.
Yeah.
And it can, the lack of interest and passing and rejection and all of it usually has not much to do with your idea.
No. And the other thing is, so I want to address, I think it was Wifflebutter said in the chat, why would a YouTuber want to make a TV show? Why would you want to give up the control that you have on your YouTube channel to go and make a show for, Hulu or Netflix or Discovery Channel or whatever? And it is actually not complicated. The answer is money. And it's not making money. It is funding the content money, because these networks will upfront, obviously, because someone has to do it, a lot of money. These shows are super, super expensive. I mean, even the cheapest TV show that you would watch costs 6 figures to make. I mean, there's no TV show that's 20 grand.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. So the answer is money. And they can afford it because they have so much money spread out over so many different projects, that the way that a lot of these studios, well, actually these days, a lot of these studios are just losing money hand over fist with their streaming channels and, using movies as tax write-offs that cost, $100 million. But traditionally, the way that they make money is they spend a whole ton of it, lose a whole ton of it, and then a few projects are ridiculously successful and not only make up for all the money they lost on the losers, but, allows the company to turn a profit. So
it's the slot machine model, because that is exactly how playing slot machines works.
Okay.
You lose and lose and lose, and you only lose the increment of your bet. You know how much you're going to lose. So you're losing $1 at a time, whatever you're betting, over and over and over, and you might be down $200, and then you'll hit a jackpot for $250. And that's how it works with with the media stuff too. And to be honest, that's how a lot of YouTube channels work too, where you don't go back down and lose. But like talking about NRM's channel having kicked off, he kind of cranked the arm of the slot machine for 2 years before he got a jackpot.
Kino Corner too reminds me of that with his Literally Me video that blew up, right? You finally have one that blows up, and now you kind of roll in. Many kudos, similar story.
Many kudos. That's who I was going to say. I realized the other day how crazy it is that he has to put out this announcement saying he's going to return to his roots and do what he enjoys, as opposed to making an audience happy and this and that. I talked about that. I mentioned that, but it didn't occur to me at the time that I met him when he had 400 subs. He had no audience of real substance like that. Not a make a living off from it audience. And it's remarkable to me when I finally realized that I met him at that stage, and then he's grown so successful that he has to actually reevaluate and adjust to that level of success. Like, holy hell, that is a big swap. But no, I mean, it's all the kind of the slot machine thing. And so you do the best you can. And like those studios are not trying to make bad movies. They know that some have more potential than others, but they're trying to get the most they can out of every project. As you just do that with everything until one explodes, which is sometimes expected, and sometimes it's a surprise. In a super weird way, Tommy Wiseau with The Room did exactly this.
Yeah, that's interesting.
He made something. Yeah, he made something that the best that he could in the vision that he had, and it initially didn't go anywhere, and then it kicked off, and then it hit the jackpot and became a very popular, well-loved thing. So yeah, that is the process, and that's the rough part about not doing what Rhett and Link are doing. You don't have all those chances to pull the slot machine when you're waiting around trying to get one project off the ground. When you're trying to get funding, you're trying to get greenlit, you're trying to get sometimes just plain permission. I mentioned a project that I'm working on. I am not waiting for the hard part. I am waiting for permission. I want a blessing and a thumbs up. That's all I need. And even that is something that you wait for. It might not happen. But when you do that for years and years, you're not taking shots. You don't have the opportunity to take shots. And it's all the eggs in one basket kind of scenario. And that's no way to do it.
Your shots are reliant upon other people. Yeah. Firing it off. Yeah. And so to go back to, really answering that question and putting it into context. So if you are, Discovery and you're this gigantic network, well, you can spend $5 million per season on a whole bunch of shows, adding up to whatever, $100 million. And, 5 of them do really well and make you money. And the other ones, those shows get canceled. That's what canceling a show is. They lost money. No, there's no audience. The show's canceled. If you're a YouTuber, are you going to spend $5 million of your own money in a make or break scenario in which the odds are really against you to make and really are in the favor of break? Because that's what Rhett and Link talk about in that video. I mentioned earlier, they're very upfront about the fact that they could lose a whole bunch of money on this because that's the game. That's the game. Yep. And that's why, even if you are like a really highly successful YouTuber and you have millions of dollars in the bank, it's like, okay, do you want to empty that bank account for your like Eminem one-shot moment to make this project that you think could be huge but might not be? It's a crazy, crazy risk. And I'm not saying that, Rhett and Link are going to be bankrupted if this thing doesn't break even. I'm sure that's not the case, and they wouldn't be so cavalier in making a decision like that. But this is why you don't. This is why you don't see what they're doing every day on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Is because it's just it's a crazy kind of risk to take on your own, as opposed to if you're Disney and this is your whole business, is you take these risks all day with a whole huge slate of content, hoping that one turns into Mandalorian or whatever, Avengers, I don't know, whatever thing, Guardians of the Galaxy. Do you think that they thought Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be so popular? No way. I think
not the way it was.
No. They were like, all right, Guardians of the Galaxy, what is this? Nobody knows what this is really, except for like really hardcore comic book fans. There's a raccoon that talks, that shoots guns. Whatever. We'll make this thing. We'll see how it goes. Well, when
distinctly different in Marvel too. At that point in the MCU, everything had been real world and human based. Iron Man's a great example. It really was like a grounded in realism kind of story that was fantastic. Whereas then you get a squeaking tree and a talking raccoon,
a tree that just
and then Dave
says
Bautista.
its name over and over again. Yeah, just introduces itself.
And Gamora, and then you throw the normal human Chris Pratt in that mix. And like, this was a really big departure compared to what they had just succeeded with. Yeah, but so they definitely, I don't think they could have seen that it would blow up the way it did.
Yeah, but they take a risk on that because they had made a $1 billion off Iron Man or, whatever preceded it. And they say, hey, let's throw some $100 million at this thing and see what happens. But yeah, when you're a YouTuber, it's all your money. It's all
for better and worse.
It's all like I said earlier. You just are pushing your chips to the center of the table and seeing what happens. So that's the difference. And that's why you would see, a YouTuber saying, I mean, this is what happened with, Michael made a YouTube premium show on Vsauce. Jake made a YouTube premium show on Vsauce 3. Like, if you watch Could You Survive the Movies, I think what people don't know is that show should have cost way more than it did. And, Jake and Eric really did a crazy amount of heavy lifting for that show. That was really kind of like largely uncompensated and not nearly to the level that it should have been. But I mean, that show still costs a lot of money. Like, he couldn't have self-funded that.
That was not going to be a self-fund. No, but that's something that we do too, where we do a lot of heavy lifting that other places would require several people doing jobs that we just do.
Oh yeah.
And it's a nice thing because it costs much less. It's much less complex. But that's been a bit of a shock to me when over the years when I encounter different operations, sometimes different companies, or I'm like, why do you need 15 people when you could have 3 good ones?
Yeah.
If you get the right 3 people, then 90% of it's done. And then, you find somebody pretty good to mop up. So I know we just talked about how Rhett and Link are the best of the best, which they are, and still couldn't get the shows developed, which is in stark contrast to what I'm going to say, which is it is much better to just plain do a thing in terms of getting funded. Your odds of getting funded are better to attract funding to what you're already doing than to get funding to do something. That is another thing that I hope people really understand, is that attracting funding is a much easier process than trying to get approved for funding, like with an idea that you're pitching, whatever. I mentioned this project that I'll bring up again, and hopefully can go into detail in the future. I don't want to, I would love to have that funded. Obviously I would. I think it will be much easier to get that funding when there's 1 or 2 pilots. This is why pilots exist for things, because then you can attract funding to something as opposed to get funding to make something. There's a really big difference here. And I see versions of this, people misunderstanding it constantly in the art and creative communities, where it's like, no, I deserve money for my brilliance and talent right now, and they don't make it. We mentioned Colton doing this job for years, and then he attracted the funding for a full-time job. Had he done it a different way, he probably doesn't get the job at that time.
It's a demonstration of value.
Yeah.
And that's what funding is someone handing over their value to you to invest in what they believe they'll get value back from, right? It's like really not that complicated.
It's
how it
weirdly
works.
common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, that if somebody asked you to invest in something, you're more likely, well, this is a Shark Tank thing too, where it's like, who cares about great ideas? There are a million of those. They want to see that somebody has sold X number of units in a year, and like, how can we build this? It's kind of crazy how there's some shows like that and some things that you can watch that lay it all out. They give you literally everything you need to know about how all this stuff works. All you have to do is pay attention to what's happening and what's not happening.
Yeah, no, that's true, because it's not that much more complicated than the basics that they explain in something like Shark Tank. Like for instance, if someone comes in and they're like, well, we have, $3 million in sales. And they're like, okay, so, what did you make on the 3 million? Oh, we lost $800,000. It's like, okay, well,
yeah.
if there's no margin, there's no profit, then what am I investing in? This is just, you're going out of business. The $3 million doesn't matter in revenue if it costs you $800,000 to get there. You're going backwards, and that is a generalization. There are obviously a lot of gigantic businesses that lose money year after year after year, but those are exceptions that are funded by venture capital and stuff, in which those people are willing to lose money in the short term for the prospect of like a gigantic return later. That's not normal. Those are really fringe cases. What's normal is, well, my sister and I started this popcorn business and we want to sell this new low carb popcorn. And do you want to invest in it? Oh, well, we're losing a lot of money and we're a month from, going bankrupt. Well, no, I don't want to invest in that. Why would I want to go bankrupt with you? It's not really more complex than that.
It isn't. It truly isn't. I was thinking the left path people, all those ones we're talking about, they have used their body of work to attract funding. That's how they got to pivot. That's where the pivot comes from. They had something that people looked at and they're like, yeah, let's do this other thing. Or I'd like to hire you to, direct this or that. Or in, some of the cases, an even, stranger thing has happened. But does that happen? Can they do any change at all? Can they do any of it near the beginning? Okay. It's unthinkable that they could. If you consider how it would work, if you do 10 seconds of this, well, realistically, what happens? Nothing happens. They would simply not be able to do it. But they've done something that gave them credibility and a body of work, and it made people feel good about how that money was being spent. Because again, nobody likes spending on an idea. Worked out better. But again, for some things, that's really hard. And that's why Rhett and Link ran into trouble getting their stuff funded, in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and I have two examples, one of which comes from our podcast. We had Andrew Bowser on the podcast to talk about his Onyx the Fortuitous film, which was the same thing. There was no way that was going to get funded just walking through the door and asking someone, hey, can I have, I don't know, $600,000 to make this movie, which is nothing when it comes to making a feature film, $600,000. So, he went to Kickstarter. You and I both, were contributors to his Kickstarter, along with a whole bunch of people that got that movie made. The other one, which we haven't talked about, and I was pulling it up because I wasn't even sure the name of this guy's. So I might screw up even what the origin is. But so you have to look this up. Okay, you have to look this up because this is more sort of a story that I heard through somebody else. There are these Australian YouTubers, and their YouTube channel is called Raka Raka. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Raka Raka? I don't know. Danny and Michael Philippou. I'm just like butchering all of this. I'm pretty sure that they self-funded a film, that they just were like, we want to make a movie, and they did. And I am pretty sure it was just purchased by A24. I'm pretty sure. It's possible that I got a lot of that wrong, but it's possible that I got all of it right, which would be awesome. That'd be way better. So yeah, look these guys up because I'm pretty sure they are another example of this whole concept where no one was going to give these guys money, so they just did it themselves. I don't know how much they spent on it, and now they're like wildly successful with this thing, which doesn't mean that just because you did it yourself, it's going to be wildly successful. But the point is, this is the path. There really is kind of only one path here, whether you're starting a YouTube channel with 0 subs or you have 10 million subs and you want to make a movie. It's all do it yourself. You have to just make it.
It is. And there's an optics element to this too, that optics is the wrong word, but I will put it this way. I've talked to several people in different circumstances who have said some version of this to me, where they look at somebody and think, or they say, this person is not self-funding. They're not investing into their own work. If they are not investing in themselves, why should I invest in them? Why should I give them money if they're not willing to give money to themselves to do this thing? And it indicates that they don't want it as badly as they want, something else, or they don't believe in it, or they think it's too risky. They can't afford to do it. So when you invest in yourself, and I don't mean shocking amounts of money, it can be time. It can be time. Kevin, you were investing in yourself when you were making Jerry Bloop, and that was pre-AdSense on YouTube. Nobody was making money that way. But you were investing in yourself. It made it easy to believe that you would do a good job with another project. That's a major part of why you got hired, I'm sure. This is always a question for somebody who wants to give you approval, permission, cut a check, hire you for a job, whatever. It's like, if this person hasn't put forth the commitment that they're asking me for, if they haven't committed to themselves, this is not a good situation for me. You have to eliminate that question. You have to make sure that question does not get asked. If somebody thinks that, it's over.
Well, because why should they? Why should they? Why should they give you their money if you won't give yourself your money? Yes. And it doesn't have to be money. It's like you said, time, resources, whatever it is, commitment. It doesn't have to be a dollar symbol next to whatever the investment is. Right.
Yeah. And you can ask, even if you're asking for money to make something that's on a scale much larger or more in depth than you were doing, that makes sense. So like, think about the amount of time it takes to write a book. You can say, I don't have the time for that. I have to work. I have to do this and that. I can't do that in a timely fashion. So what I've done is, here's 10 short stories that I was able to pound out, a paragraph at a time or whatever. That does fit with my life. But what I really need is a year here to write this book. Well, okay. You did what you could. You invested what you could in your project, and now you're asking to unlock something else with money. That's sensible. Those situations happen. Andrew Bowser is a good example of this. I made all these little videos on YouTube, little in the comparison to a feature film. I did this. I need something else to make something on a different scale. And he hit his fundraising goal without a ton of trouble because everybody saw what was happening there. They knew that he had invested what he could and that he needed this other thing to make it on a different scale. At no point was that question about investing in yourself something anybody thought of.
Well, and they wanted to, and people like us who did help fund that were willing to pay to see the next scale, which is also an important part of what you're talking about, right? Like I was willing to give him money because I wanted to see what a 2-hour Onyx movie looked like, right? Mm-hmm. So that's also part of this calculus that you're talking about. Is it's not just like, oh, well, I trust this guy to make the thing. It's like, no, I also want to see the thing. I want to help make it come to life because I want to watch it.
Yes.
So
we're bought in.
I'm bought in, and there's value there to me, is what I'm saying. I guess I didn't really articulate that well. The value to me in giving him the money to make what he wants to make is that I want to see what he wants to make.
Yeah. And I think that's a factor for Rhett and Link too. It's certainly something that is going to help them with whatever they're doing. Is that, I don't think they're crowdfunding anything, whatever, but they have a ton of people who want to see them do whatever this is. This big thing, this passion project on a larger scale. They have a lot of people who want to see it happen.
Oh yeah.
They have invested in themselves to the point where that got built. That system got built. You have a pretty good community of mind blow aficionados. Those people wanted to see you make more mind blow again. You made that happen. I'm stumbling because everything works this way. Everything works this way. Getting dates works this way. Like you're much more likely to, you kind of come across somebody, and if you just look at them and they just look at you and you say, do you want to be my girlfriend? Your odds are very, very low. And even if they say yes, it's probably not going to work out. That's its own red flag if they actually say yes. And think about the normal interactions that build that moving to a successful place. Somebody buying in to you, getting promoted at a job. You demonstrate that value like Kevin's talking about. You don't walk in and say, well, Bob is a manager and I'm definitely smarter than Bob, so you should make me Bob's boss. Like, no, this isn't happening. It's not happening at all. You have to build the thing, whether it's an in-person relationship, whether it's making the content that people value, like the Mind Blow did for people. Like literally everything works this way.
Yeah. What the next question is, as we've talked about, sort of people like the Raka Raka guys who made a movie and now they're in with A24, or even someone like Joe Penna, Mystery Guitar Man, who made a short film that I believe it got into some film festival, and then that got picked up, and then that turned into making feature films. Is what happens with this Rhett and Link show will be really fascinating to see. For us to, I guess, revisit this topic once it comes out and what the response is, because there is a real chance that it does turn into some next level thing, right?
Yeah.
Because that was the basis of most of this discussion, where you make the thing and then somebody sees it and then, you get to where you want to go. I don't know that, but it's totally possible that Netflix sees the show that they made for themselves on YouTube and then says, oh, okay, here's quadruple the budget to make it for us instead, right? To make the next season, to ramp it up, to scale it up, and we'll give you creative control. We just want to see more of this and we want to be a part of it. I don't know. We'll see. But, it'll be really interesting to see how that pans out. I don't know how long it will be. I'm not quite sure that they mentioned that or that they even know, because this kind of stuff takes
probably
not. That kind of stuff is a nightmare.
If it's sufficiently large scale. I mean, if it's truly a major leap, unless they've been doing, laying all the groundwork for a long time so that it's going to kick off soon, it'll probably be a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. But those are the two paths. So, I I laid them out. I could see a lot more stuff also coming from the left path. Certainly I would like to take the left path at some point and work on writing some books. That's in my left path plan someday that I hope to get to.
Kevin, do you think there's a point at which, so we are right path people. We talked about like stacking a Tower of Babel of work that we just kind of aren't pivoters like that. Do you think there's going to be a time at which you do stop that and you turn from a right path Rhett and Linker into a pivoting left path?
Well, I never even thought about the fact that you could take both at some point over the course of your career, but that is totally viable. Yeah, I mean, that is something that I really am planning on doing. I just have to get to the point where, I get off the right path, backtrack a little bit, back to the beginning of the fork, and then walk left for a while and sort of see how that path treats me.
I think I am much more likely to stop altogether. I think that is
Just get off the path. Just run into the adjacent field blindly.
I think that when I'm done, I'm truly like, I'm not going to do anything else. I will do the things that I kind of want to do that are probably based around my home. I mean, it really is like, to me, you do the job and then, you kind of quietly disappear and, tend the home.
Oh, you're Homer. You're the Homer meme of him like receding into the bushes.
Yeah. I was thinking more along the lines of Pompey, who could have had dictatorial power over Rome. Could have had it, but he did his job, won his battles, and then just went back home. Cincinnatus as well. This is the Cincinnatan ideal, where it did the job and then went back home to be a farmer. I've left it at that. But yeah, I don't have, I think it's an ambition question, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way at all. I mean it in a do you want to do things way. Like Rhett and Link are very ambitious because they have stuff that they want to do. I don't have anything that I want to do in that sense. So to me, it's like, oh, you've run the race and well, now you go home. So there's definitely a temperament thing that factors in here with, I don't know. We'll see too, because, I'm thinking like, oh, what happens to the pivot? We have to understand that nobody in this game has actually worked for very long just because it's so new. Mm-hmm. This is not the case. It's like nobody's put 50 years into YouTube.
We got to go though. I got some work to do. Thank you, Ducky, Frankie, Linus, Monahim, Mr. Weir, Richter, Bad Spoon, Wiffle Butter, and some of the people who dropped in and out along the way. If you want to support the podcast, please go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. We'll be back next week. Until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezergood, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelksies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.